Captain Jake Morrison stared at the empty space where New Boston should have been. His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The scanner readings showed nothing but floating debris and radiation, clouds. 2.3 million people had lived on that planet just 12 hours ago. Now there was nothing left but dust and ash. "Sir, I'm picking up some life signs from the outer moon base," Lieutenant Paul Rogers said from his station. His voice was quiet and careful. Everyone on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn knew what they were looking at. Everyone knew what it meant. "Take us there," Morrison said. His voice sounded strange even to himself. Hollow. Empty. Like the space where New Boston used to be. Dr. Lisa Parker stood beside him, her face pale as she watched the scanner readings. She had friends on New Boston. Good people who spent their lives studying alien plants and animals. People who never hurt anyone. People who just wanted to learn about the universe and make it a better place. The Defiant Dawn moved slowly toward the small moon that orbited where New Boston had been. The moon base was tiny, just a research station with maybe 50 people. It was a miracle that anyone had survived at all. Morrison's communication panel beeped. A weak signal was coming from the moon base. He opened the channel and heard a voice he recognized. Commander Kate Sullivan ran the research station. She had been friends with Morrison for 10 years. "Jake, is that you?" Her voice was shaking. "Please tell me you got our message. Please tell me help is coming." "Kate, it's me. We're here." "What happened?" Morrison already knew what happened, but he needed to hear it from someone who saw it. The Corvin fleet came out of nowhere, 50 ships, maybe more. They didn't send any warnings, they didn't ask us to leave, they just started shooting. Kate's voice broke. "We watched it happen, Jake. We watched them kill everyone. The whole planet just burned." Morrison closed his eyes. His brother Tom had lived on New Boston with his wife and 2 kids. His nephew was only 8 years old. His niece was 6. They were probably playing in their backyard when the bombs started falling. "Did anyone else make it out?" Dr. Parker asked. She was trying to stay calm, but Morrison could hear the fear in her voice. "A few transport ships got away before the shooting started. Maybe 1,000 people total. That's all that's left of New Boston. 1,000 people out of 2.3 million. Morrison felt something cold and hard forming in his chest, something that felt like ice but burned like fire. "Kate, we're coming to get you and your people. Hold tight." The Defiant Dawn docked with the moon base 20 minutes later. Morrison and Dr. Parker went aboard to help with the evacuation. What they found there would stay with them for the rest of their lives. The survivors were mostly scientists and their families. They sat in the small common room staring at nothing. Some were crying, others just looked empty, like their souls had been ripped out of their bodies. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, kept asking her mother when Daddy was coming home. Her mother couldn't answer. An old man named Professor Bill Gray grabbed Morrison's arm. Morrison remembered him from the colony dedication ceremony 5 years ago. He had been so proud of the new world they were building. "They came so fast," Gray said. "The children were in school. The mothers were shopping in the market. People were at work, just living their lives. The Corvins didn't care. They killed them all." Morrison helped load the survivors onto his ship. Each person had a story. Each person had lost everything. Families destroyed, dreams crushed, lives ended for no reason except that some alien empire decided humans didn't belong on that world. When the evacuation was complete, Morrison stood on his bridge and looked at the empty space one more time. He opened a communication channel to Earth and waited for Admiral Steve Collins to answer. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison reporting from the New Boston system. Jake, please tell me you have good news." "No, sir. The colony is gone, completely destroyed. We have about 1,000 survivors. 2.3 million people are dead." There was a long silence. Finally, Admiral Collins spoke. "The Galactic Council? Ambassador Foster is presenting our case right now. The Corvins claim we violated their territorial boundaries. They say the attack was legal under galactic law." Another silence. Morrison could almost hear the Admiral thinking. "Jake, Bring those people home, we'll take care of them. Yes, sir. Admiral, there's something else. The survivors say the Corvins didn't give any warnings, no chance to surrender, no chance to evacuate. They just started killing. I understand, Captain. Come home. The trip back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Morrison watched the survivors try to rebuild their lives. The little girl stopped asking about her daddy. The old professor stopped talking altogether. The scientists tried to work, but their hands shook too much to hold their instruments. Dr. Parker spent most of her time with the children. She read them stories and played games with them. But Morrison could see the anger growing in her eyes. The same anger that was growing in his own heart. On the last day of the journey, Ambassador Foster sent a message from the Galactic Council. Morrison gathered his crew to hear it. The Galactic Council has reviewed our complaint about the new Boston incident. The Zephyrian Chancellor says our emotional response shows why humans are not ready for galactic civilization. The Nexari representative says this is a learning experience that will help our species mature. Morrison turned off the message. He looked at his crew. These were good people. People who believed in doing the right thing. People who trusted the system to protect them. Sir? Lieutenant Rogers asked. What are your orders? Morrison looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens who killed his brother were probably celebrating. Somewhere out there, the galactic powers were laughing at human weakness. We go home, Morrison said. We report what we saw. And then we wait for orders. But Morrison knew that everything had changed. The galaxy had shown its true face. The great alien civilizations that claimed to be wise and peaceful had revealed themselves to be bullies and killers. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans would accept this injustice and move on. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the defiant dawn approached Earth, Morrison made a promise to himself and to the memory of everyone who died on New Boston. This would not be forgotten. This would not be forgiven. And this would not go unpunished. The galaxy had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for a long time. Something that the alien powers had never faced before. Something that would change everything. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human vengeance was about to begin. Admiral Steve Collins stood in the war room deep inside Earth's military headquarters. Around him, the best minds in human space forces studied star charts and tactical displays. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional whisper of classified conversations. 3 months had passed since New Boston burned. 3 months of diplomatic meetings that went nowhere. 3 months of alien politicians telling humans to accept their place in the galaxy. 3 months of growing anger that now filled every human heart like poison. Admiral, we have confirmation, General Ryan Clark said as he entered the room. Ambassador Foster's final appeal was rejected. The Galactic Council officially supports the Corvin action. They say we were trespassing on ancient territorial claims. Collins nodded slowly. He had expected this news, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. What about the other species? Any support? The smaller worlds are afraid to speak up. The major powers are united against us. The Zephyrians called us an immature species that needs to learn patience. The Nexari said we should be grateful for the lesson in galactic law. Dr. Ben Hayes looked up from his computer terminal. For 30 years, he had been developing weapons that he hoped humanity would never need to use. Now those weapons were about to become very important. Admiral, all systems are ready. Every human world has been notified. Our ships are in position. Collins walked to the large window that looked out over the city. Millions of people lived normal lives down there, going to work and raising their children. Most of them had no idea that their government was about to change the galaxy forever. Gentlemen, for 30 years we have tried to be good neighbors. We shared our technology. We opened our worlds to alien visitors. We followed their laws and respected their customs. In return, they murdered our people and told us to be grateful for the lesson. Collins turned back to face the room. Today, we teach them a lesson of our own. Commander Kate Sullivan sat in the captain's chair of the Silent Fury, one of humanity's most advanced stealth destroyers. Around her, 12 other ships waited in the darkness of space, invisible to any alien sensors. They had been waiting here for 2 weeks, studying their targets. "Commander, we have Admiral Collins' authorization," Lieutenant Paul Rogers reported from his communication station. "Operation Payback is authorized to begin." Sullivan looked at the tactical display. 3 Corvan military bases hung in space before them. Each base had enough firepower to destroy a dozen human colonies. Each base was responsible for training the soldiers who had murdered the people of New Boston. "All ships, this is Silent Fury. You know your targets. Remember, we are not here to commit genocide. We are here to remove military threats. Civilian areas are off limits. Make your shots count." The human ships moved like ghosts through space. Their quantum cloaking technology made them invisible to every known form of detection. The Corvans had no idea death was coming for them. First base died in 30 seconds. Human gravity weapons crushed the station's hull like an empty can. The second base lasted a little longer, but not much. The third base actually managed to get off a distress signal before it joined the others, as floating debris. "All targets destroyed," Rogers reported. "Minimal collateral damage. No civilian casualties detected." Sullivan allowed herself a small smile. The Corvans had thought they were safe behind their shields and weapons. They had thought no one would dare attack them. They were wrong. Set. Course for the next target system. We have work to do. The news of the attack spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in recorded history, someone had successfully attacked a major galactic power. The Corvan Empire, which had ruled through fear and intimidation for centuries, had been hurt by a species they considered primitive. The Zephyrian Chancellor called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to discuss this unprecedented situation. The Great Hall buzzed with nervous conversations and worried whispers. "This is an outrage," the Corvan ambassador declared. "These humans have committed acts of war against peaceful installations. They must be stopped immediately." Ambassador Foster stood up from the human delegation. She was a small woman, but her voice carried clearly through the hall. "Peaceful installations? Those bases trained the soldiers who murdered 2 million civilians. Those bases built the weapons that burned children alive in their beds." "You violated our territorial claims," the Corvan ambassador shot back. "The destruction of your colony was legal under galactic law." "Then perhaps galactic law needs to change," Foster replied calmly. "Or perhaps those who hide behind unjust laws need to face the consequences of their actions." The Zephyrian Chancellor struck his gavel for order. "The human delegation will be silent. This council will not tolerate threats from a junior species." Foster smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Chancellor, with respect, this council has already shown what it tolerates. It tolerates the murder of innocent people. It tolerates the destruction of entire worlds. It tolerates injustice as long as the victims are human." She looked around the hall at the assembled alien representatives. "What this council does not tolerate, apparently, is consequences. Well, I have news for you. The age of consequences has begun." Back on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison met with his crew aboard the Defiant Dawn. The ship had been upgraded with new weapons and defensive systems. Like every human vessel, it was now far more dangerous than it appeared. "Sir, we have new orders," Rogers reported. "We're to begin liberation operations in the Vega sector. Intelligence reports several slave colonies that the Galactic Council claims don't exist." Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her research station. "Jake, I've been analyzing the alien technology we captured from those Corvan bases. Their weapons are powerful, but they're not very smart. Their computers are centuries behind ours. Their tactics are based on intimidation rather than actual military strategy." Morrison nodded. "That's what we're counting on. They've been the bullies of the galaxy for so long that they've forgotten how to fight a real war." "Sir, what about the innocent aliens? The ones who aren't part of the major powers?" Rogers asked. "We protect them," Morrison said firmly. "We're not becoming like the Corvans. We're showing the galaxy what justice looks like. The human fleet, spread out across the galaxy like a virus of vengeance. Ship after ship struck at military targets. freed slave colonies, and exposed the hidden crimes of the major powers. Each victory was carefully planned and precisely executed. The galaxy began to realize that humanity had been hiding its true capabilities for decades. Human ships were faster, smarter, and more deadly than anyone had imagined. Human soldiers were better trained and better equipped than any alien force. Most importantly, human leaders were willing to accept losses that would terrify alien commanders. As reports of human victories poured in from across the galaxy, Admiral Collins prepared for the next phase of the operation. The major powers were mobilizing their fleets. Soon, the real war would begin. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from several minor Corvan colonies," General Clark reported. "They're asking for protection from their own government." Collins studied the tactical displays. The plan was working even better than he had hoped. The galaxy was learning that humanity was not the weak, peaceful species they had believed. Accept their surrender. Treat them well. Show them what civilization really looks like. Collins looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, alien leaders were realizing that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something in humanity that should have been left sleeping. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had become the most successful predators on their home world, and why that success had prepared them for something much larger than anyone had imagined. The Corvan battle fleet assembled at Kepler Station was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in over 1,000 years. 300 ships filled the space around the massive orbital fortress. Admiral Vex Corvan, the Empire's greatest military leader, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his forces prepare for battle. "The humans think they can challenge us," he growled to his officers. "Today, we will show them the price of defying the Corvan Empire. Today we will burn their worlds as they burned our bases." General Ryan Clark studied the enemy formation from the bridge of his command ship, the Earth's Hammer. Around him, 50 human vessels waited in the darkness. The numbers looked hopeless. 6 enemy ships for every human one. But Clark knew something the Corvans didn't. "Sir, all ships report ready," Colonel Tony Blake said from his station. Blake commanded the special forces teams that would be crucial to the battle plan. "The stealth infiltrators are in position." Clark nodded. "Begin phase 1. Deep inside Kepler Station, Agent Nina Ross and her team moved through maintenance tunnels like shadows. They had been aboard the station for 3 days, invisible to all sensors. Ross was humanity's best intelligence operative, and she had learned secrets that would change everything. "Nina to base," she whispered into her communicator. "The reactor control room is secured. Beginning data extraction now." Her fingers flew over the alien computer systems. For 30 years, humanity had been studying alien technology. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic visit, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to learn. Now that knowledge was paying off. "My God," Nina breathed as she read the data streaming across her screen. "General Clark, you need to see this. The Corvans aren't just military conquerors. They're slavers. They've been harvesting sentient beings from primitive worlds for centuries." Clark's voice came back cold and hard. "How many?" "Billions, sir. Entire species have been wiped out. The survivors are kept in labor camps across Corvan space." "Copy that, Agent Ross. Complete your mission." Admiral Vex Corvan was still admiring his fleet when his communications officer began screaming, "Sir, we're receiving broadcasts from across the Empire. Our classified files are being transmitted on all frequencies." On screens throughout Corvan space, the truth began to appear. Images of slave camps, records of genocide, lists of extinct species. The Corvan Empire's greatest secrets were being exposed to the entire galaxy. "Find the source," Vex snarled. "Stop these transmissions." "Sir, they're coming from inside Kepler Station, but that's impossible. Our security is perfect." Vex was about to respond when his tactical display lit up with warnings. The human fleet had appeared from nowhere, already in attack formation. How had they gotten so close without being detected? "All ships, attack formation, destroy the humans." The battle began with the fury of a supernova. Corvan ships opened fire with everything they had. Space filled with energy beams and plasma torpedoes. It should have been a massacre. It was, but not the way Vex expected. Human ships moved through the Corvin formations like dancers, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Their return fire was precise and devastating. Each shot found its target. Each target was destroyed or disabled with surgical accuracy. "Sir, we're losing ships too fast," Vex's tactical officer reported. "The humans are predicting our moves. It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it." They did know. Dr. Amy Chen had spent years studying alien psychology and tactics. She had predicted every move the Corvins would make. Her analysis had been programmed into the human battle computers, giving them an incredible advantage. Captain Alex Wright's converted merchant ship, the Free Trader, didn't look like much compared to the military vessels around it. But Wright and his crew had a special mission. While the main battle raged, they were rescuing the alien slaves from Corvin prison ships. "Captain, we have 300 rescued beings aboard," his first officer reported. "They're mostly from species we've never seen before." Wright looked at the freed aliens crowding his cargo holds. They were weak and scared, but their eyes held something Wright recognized. Hope. For the first time in years, they had hope. "Take us to the next prison ship. We're not leaving anyone behind." The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, the Corvin fleet was scattered wreckage. Admiral Vex Corvin's flagship drifted powerless in space, its crew dead or unconscious. The great Corvin Empire had just lost 60% of its total military strength. General Clark opened a communication channel to all surviving Corvin ships. "This is General Clark of the Human Defense Forces. You have 3 choices. Surrender and face trial for your crimes. Flee and spend the rest of your lives running, or stay and join your admiral in death." Most chose to flee. A few chose to fight, and died quickly. Only one ship chose to surrender. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Corvin Empire, one of the 3 great powers, had been crushed by a species they had considered primitive. Alien leaders who had dismissed humanity as weak suddenly began to reconsider their positions. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Chancellor Lex Zephyr called an emergency meeting of his war council. The elegant palace that had witnessed 1,000 years of Zephyrian dominance now buzzed with fear and uncertainty. "How is this possible?" the Chancellor demanded. "The humans have been in space for only 30 years. They should be no match for established powers." "Sir, our intelligence was wrong," General Voss admitted. "The humans haven't been exploring for 30 years. They've been preparing for war. Every colony ship was also a military transport. Every trade mission was also a spy operation. Every diplomat was also gathering intelligence." Chancellor Zephyr felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. "What do our analysts say about human capabilities?" "Sir, we may have seriously underestimated them. Their technology is more advanced than we thought. Their tactics are more sophisticated than anything we've seen, and their willingness to accept casualties is beyond our understanding." The Chancellor stood and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Millions of Zephyrians lived peaceful lives below, protected by the power and prestige of their ancient civilization. Now that protection seemed very fragile. "Send a message to the humans, tell them we are willing to negotiate." "Sir, what about our alliance with the Corvins and Nixari?" "The Corvins are finished. The Nixari are next. We need to protect our own people now." Deep in Nixari space, the collective's governing minds processed the data from the battle. Unlike biological beings, they felt no fear. But they recognized a significant threat when they saw one. The humans represent a 12% probability of total victory in galactic conflict, the primary mind calculated. This probability is unacceptable. We must take direct action. Agreed. Prepare the time manipulation devices. If we cannot defeat the humans in the present, we will eliminate them in the past. Back on Earth, Admiral Collins received reports from across human space. The liberation of Corvin slave camps was proceeding ahead of schedule. Dozens of alien species were being freed from centuries of bondage. Many were asking to join the human cause. Sir, we're getting surrender offers from Corvin colonies across 3 sectors, General Clark reported. They want protection from their own government. Collins smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since New Boston. Accept all surrenders. Treat the civilians well. Show them what real civilization looks like. Dr. Lisa Parker entered the command room carrying a data pad. Admiral, you need to see this. Nina Ross found something in the Corvin files. The 3 major powers have been working together for centuries. They've been suppressing the development of younger species. Any race that showed too much promise was eliminated. Collins read the report, his expression growing darker with each page. How many species? At least 50 that we know of. Probably more. The galaxy should have hundreds of spacefaring civilizations. Instead, it has been kept under the control of 3 ancient empires. Collins looked around the room at his officers. These were people who had joined the military to protect humanity. Now they were protecting the entire galaxy from those who would rule through fear and oppression. Gentlemen, we're not just fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting for the future of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, the Defiant Dawn is requesting permission to begin operations in the Nexari sectors. We have reports of more slave colonies that need liberation. Permission granted, Captain. Show them that. Humanity protects the innocent. As human forces spread across the galaxy, they left something behind that hadn't been seen for 1,000 years. Hope. Species that had lived in fear for generations began to believe that freedom was possible. The great powers that had ruled, through intimidation, found their authority crumbling. The hunt had begun. And the hunters were just getting started. The alarm screaming through Dr. Ben Hayes' laboratory meant only one thing. The Nexari Collective was trying to erase humanity from history itself. Hayes ran to his main computer terminal, his hands flying over the controls as he watched reality itself begin to flicker. Admiral Collins, we have a problem, Hayes shouted into his communicator. The Nexari are using time manipulation technology. They're trying to prevent humanity from ever reaching the stars. Outside the laboratory windows, the city began to change. Buildings that had stood for decades started to fade like ghosts. People walking on the streets below began to move in slow motion. The very fabric of time was being twisted by alien technology. Ben, how long do we have? Colin's voice crackled through the communication system. Maybe an hour before the changes become permanent. They're targeting the moment our first ship left Earth. If they succeed, we'll never have colonized space. New Boston will never have existed. None of this will have happened. Hayes worked frantically at his computers. For 30 years, he had been studying temporal mechanics just in case humanity ever faced this kind of threat. Now all that research was the only thing standing between human civilization and complete erasure. I can build a temporal shield around Earth, but I need time, and I need you to keep the Nexari busy. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as it approached the Nexari home system. Around him, the largest human fleet ever, assembled prepared for the most important battle in galactic history. 200 ships carrying the hopes of every free species in the galaxy. Sir, we're detecting massive temporal distortions around the Nexari homeworld, Lieutenant Paul Rogers reported. They're not just trying to change our timeline, they're trying to reset the entire galaxy back to before any species achieved spaceflight. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Nexari fleet was unlike anything they had faced before. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons that fired backwards through time. Technology that made reality itself into a weapon. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy is trying to erase everything we've fought for. Everyone we've saved. Every hope for freedom in this galaxy. We cannot let them succeed. Dr. Lisa Parker worked beside Morrison, analyzing the strange readings from the Nexari ships. Jake, I think I understand how their technology works. They exist partially outside normal time. That's why they've lived for thousands of years. But it's also their weakness, Co. What do you mean? If we can force them back into normal time, they'll be vulnerable. Their ships will become solid targets instead of temporal ghosts. Morrison smiled grimly. How do we do that? We need to create a massive gravitational field, something strong enough to anchor them in our reality. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld, Chancellor Lex Zephyr watched his civilization crumble. The revelation of the major powers' crimes had sparked revolts. Across Zephyrian space, worlds that had been loyal for centuries were declaring independence. The Zephyrian Empire was falling apart. Chancellor, the humans are requesting a meeting, his aide announced nervously. Let them come, Zephyr said wearily. Perhaps it's time to face the consequences of our actions. Ambassador Helen Foster entered the Zephyrian throne room an hour later. She was accompanied by General Clark and Captain Alex Wright. The Zephyrians had expected threats and demands. Instead, Foster surprised them. Chancellor, we're not here as conquerors. We're here to offer you a choice. Zephyr raised an eyebrow. What kind of choice? You can cling to the old ways and fall with the other corrupt powers, or you can help us build something better. A galaxy where all species are equal, where justice matters more than power. And if I refuse? Foster's expression remained calm. Then you'll face the same fate as the Corvan Empire. But we'd rather have you as an ally than an enemy. General Clark stepped forward. Chancellor, your people aren't evil. They've been led by a system that values power over justice. Help us change that system and your civilization can survive and thrive. Zephyr looked at these humans who had shattered the galactic order in just 6 months. They could have demanded total surrender. They could have destroyed his world. Instead, they were offering redemption. What would you need from us? Release all political prisoners. End the tribute system that keeps other worlds in poverty. Join the coalition fighting the Nexari. Back in space above the Nexari homeworld, the battle was not going well. Human ships were being destroyed by weapons that struck before they were fired. Entire squadrons were being erased from existence. The Nexari's control over time made them nearly impossible to fight. Sir, we've lost 30 ships, Rogers reported. Our weapons can't lock onto targets that exist in multiple timelines. Morrison watched another human destroyer vanish from reality. They were running out of time and options. Then Dr. Parker's voice cut through the chaos. Jake, I've got it. We need to overload our gravity generators, all ships at once. It'll create a temporal anchor point that will force the Nexari ships into our reality. What about our ships? Will we survive the gravity surge? Some of us will, maybe half. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew that had followed him through every battle. These people had trusted him to lead them. Now he was asking them to die for a plan that might not work. All ships, this is Morrison. Prepare to overload gravity generators on my mark. This is going to hurt, but it's our only chance. The response was immediate. Every human captain confirmed ready. No one questioned the order. No one asked for guarantees. They trusted their commander and their cause. Mark, 200 human. Ships released their gravitational energy at once. Space itself twisted and warped around the Nexari fleet. Reality groaned under the strain, and then suddenly the Nexari ships became solid, visible, vulnerable. The second phase of the battle lasted only minutes. Human weapons, designed for precision rather than temporal manipulation, tore through Nexari ships like paper. The ancient collective, which had ruled through superior technology for millennia, discovered that all their advantages meant nothing when they were forced to fight in normal space and time. Sir, the Nexari fleet is destroyed, Rogers reported. But we're detecting massive energy buildup from their homeworld. They're preparing to activate something big. On the surface of the Nexari world, the last surviving members of the collective made their final decision. If they could not rule the galaxy, they would destroy it. The planet-sized weapon they had built over thousands of years began to charge. Captain Morrison, this is Agent Nina Ross, came a voice from the planet's surface. I'm inside their control center. They're trying to create a galactic supernova. It'll destroy every star system within 1,000 light years. Morrison felt his blood turn to ice. Can you stop it? I can try. But I'll need cover. They've got automated defenses around. The control center. You've got it. All ground forces protect Agent Ross at all costs. Colonel Tony Blake led his special forces teams through the alien city. The Nexari had built their world like a giant machine, all metal corridors and glowing energy conduits. It was like fighting inside a computer. Nina, we're at your position. What do you need? 10 minutes to hack their systems. Can you give me that? Blake looked at the waves of robotic defenders moving toward their position. We'll give you 20. The final battle was fought in the heart of the Nexari homeworld. Human soldiers with basic weapons faced robots armed with technology beyond imagination. But the humans had something the robots didn't. They had a cause, worth dying for. One by one, Blake's team fell to enemy fire. But they held their position. They protected Agent Ross as she worked to save the galaxy, and when she finally succeeded in shutting down the Doomsday weapon, only half of Blake's force was still alive. The war was over. The three great powers that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were destroyed or defeated. Across 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived in fear for generations began to hope for a better future. Admiral Collins stood in the ruins of the Nexari Control Center, looking at the galaxy's new reality. The old order was gone. The question now was what would replace it. Sir, we're receiving surrender messages from across the galaxy, General Clark reported. Minor powers that supported the old regime want to negotiate. Collins nodded. Accept all surrenders, but make it clear that the age of oppression is over. We're building something new now, something better. Captain Morrison joined them, his uniform torn and dirty from the ground battle. Admiral, what are your orders? Do we occupy their worlds? Do we set up military governments? Collins looked out at the stars visible through the broken dome of the control center. No, Jake, we go home. We help the galaxy rebuild itself. We've shown them that tyranny can be defeated. Now they need to learn to live free. The reckoning was complete. The galaxy's rulers had been shaken to their core. But the real work was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the last shot was fired in what historians now call the Liberation War. Admiral Steve Collins walked through the Memorial Gardens on New Boston, rebuilt from the ashes of destruction. Children from a dozen different species played together under the alien trees, their laughter echoing across the peaceful landscape. The New Boston was more beautiful than the original. Representatives from every free world in the galaxy had contributed to its reconstruction. Zephyrian architects had designed elegant buildings that seemed to grow from the Earth itself. Former Corvin engineers had built transportation systems that moved people without harming the environment. Even some reformed Nexari had helped, using their temporal technology to accelerate the growth of forests and gardens. Collins stopped at the central memorial, a simple stone wall with the names of every person who had died in the original attack. At the base of the wall, fresh flowers appeared every day, left by visitors who came from across the galaxy to pay their respects. It's beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Lisa Parker said as she joined him. She now served as the director of the Galactic Restoration Project, helping to heal the wounds left by centuries of oppression. It is, Collins agreed. Sometimes I can't believe we actually did it. Sometimes I wake up thinking this is all a dream. Parker smiled. It's real, Steve. The galaxy is free. Species that were enslaved for generations are building their own worlds. Children are growing up without fear. We made that happen. Collins had been elected as the first Secretary General of the reformed Galactic Alliance 6 months ago. It was a job he never wanted but couldn't refuse. The galaxy needed leadership, and the freed worlds trusted humanity to provide it. The council meeting is in an hour, Parker reminded him. The vote on the new trade agreements. Collins nodded. The Alliance worked differently than the old Galactic Council. Instead of 3 major powers deciding everything, every world had a voice. Decisions were made by consensus rather than force. It was slower and sometimes messier, but it was fair. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as it approached an uncharted star system. His ship was now the flagship of the Galactic Exploration Corps, leading missions to find new worlds and new life. The war was over, but the work of building a better galaxy continued. Sir, we're detecting signs of intelligent life on the 4th planet, Lieutenant Paul Rogers reported. He had been promoted to commander after the war. but he still served as Morrison's right hand. Any signs of space travel? Negative. They appear to be in the early stages of industrial development, similar to Earth about 200 years ago. Morrison smiled. Take us in slowly. Send the standard peaceful contact message in their dominant language. Let's make sure we do this right. The Exploration Corps had developed new rules for first contact. Never overwhelm a primitive species with advanced technology. Always respect their culture and beliefs. Offer knowledge and friendship, but never force it. The galaxy had learned from the mistakes of the past. Dr. Amy Chen, now head of the Corps' Cultural Division, joined Morrison on the bridge. I've been studying their radio transmissions. They seem to be a peaceful species, but they're dealing with some environmental problems. Pollution, climate change, resource depletion. Sounds familiar, Morrison said. What do you recommend? We help, but carefully. Give them clean energy technology. Share some medical knowledge, but let them solve their own problems at their own pace. This was how humanity approached every new species they encountered, not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and friends. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder was the diversity of life and intelligence that flourished when given the chance. On Earth, General Ryan Clark walked through the halls of the new Academy for Galactic Defense. Young, beings from hundreds of worlds studied together, learning not just military tactics but diplomacy, ethics, and the principles of justice. The Academy's motto, carved in stone above the main entrance, read simply, "Strength in service, honor, and protection." Clark stopped to watch a training exercise where human cadets worked alongside former Corvan soldiers and reformed Zephyrian nobles. The old divisions of species and empire meant nothing here. What mattered was character and commitment to protecting the innocent. "General, we have the graduation ceremony preparations ready," Colonel Tony Blake reported. Blake now trained the next generation of special forces, teaching them that true strength came from restraint and wisdom. How many species are represented in this graduating class? 43, sir, including some species that were considered extinct under the old regime. Clark felt a surge of pride. The galaxy that had once been ruled by 3 corrupt empires now contained hundreds of thriving civilizations. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rediscovering their own cultures and building their own futures. Chancellor Lex Zephyr, now simply Citizen Zephyr, worked in his garden on a small farm on the Zephyrian homeworld. The palace and the title were gone, but he was happier than he had been in centuries. His hands were dirty from honest work, and his heart was light with the knowledge that his people were truly free. His daughter visited him often. She was now a teacher in one of the integrated schools where Zephyrian children learned alongside beings from other worlds. She told him stories of her students, of the friendships they formed and the dreams they shared. "Father, do you ever regret it?" she asked during one visit. "Giving up the empire? Losing the power?" Zephyr looked up at the stars visible in the clear evening sky. "Child, I spent 1,000 years with power over billions of lives, but I was never truly alive until I learned to live among equals." Agent Nina Ross, now Director of Galactic Intelligence, sat in her office reading reports from across the galaxy, but these weren't reports of war or conspiracy. They were reports of progress. New schools being built, trade routes opening between former enemies, scientific discoveries being shared freely among all worlds. "Ma'am, we have the monthly summary," her aide reported. Crime rates continue to drop across all sectors. Only 3 minor territorial disputes, all resolved through mediation. And we have 17 new species requesting alliance membership. Ross smiled. "Approved. Send welcome packages to all 17. Make sure they understand that membership is about cooperation, not submission." This was the galaxy she had dreamed of during the dark days of the war, a place where intelligence was used to protect and serve, rather than to control and oppress. The memorial service for the Liberation War was held every year on the anniversary of the New Boston attack. This year, Colin stood before representatives from every world in the Alliance, humans and aliens, former enemies and old friends, all united in remembrance and hope. We gather today not to celebrate war, but to remember why we fought, Collins said to the assembled crowd. We fought not for conquest but for justice, not for power but for freedom, not for ourselves alone but for every being in this galaxy who deserved the chance to live free. He looked out at the faces before him, children who had been born after the war, growing up in a galaxy where their species didn't matter. Veterans who had fought in the darkest battles, now working to build the peace they had won. Leaders who had once been enemies, now partners in progress. The memorial behind me bears the names of those who died on this world 5 years ago. They died because of hatred and fear. They died because some beings believed that power gave them the right to destroy others. But from their sacrifice, we learned a truth that changed the galaxy forever. Collins paused, feeling the weight of history and hope on his shoulders. We learned that justice is not given by the powerful to the weak. Justice is taken by the courageous from the corrupt. We learned that freedom is not a gift from rulers to subjects. Freedom is a right that belongs to every thinking being in the universe. And we learned that the strongest force in the galaxy is not fear or hatred, but the simple desire of good people to protect each other. As Collins finished speaking, a new sound filled the air. It was the singing of children from the nearby school. Human voices joined with alien melodies in a song that had become the unofficial anthem of the new galaxy. It spoke of hope and friendship, of diversity and unity, of a future where all beings could reach for the stars together. Morrison, standing in the crowd with his crew, felt tears in his eyes as he listened. His brother and his family were gone, but they had not died in vain. Their sacrifice had awakened something in humanity that had changed the galaxy forever. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the future belonged to everyone.